Live on WFLA Now. This is Run for Fun with running enthusiast Lee Spann.
All right, let's go. Welcome back to the Stream Center for this week's episode of Run for Fun. The show is designed to help you focus on the joy of running and maybe a little less on pushing yourself hard every single day. I'm your host, Lee Spann. I'm a meteorologist at WFLA, but also an avid runner. And believe me, I did all the wrong things when I first started running. So only now am I going back and relearning and retraining myself to think differently and kind of get rid of some of those now I know are bad habits. So I'm hoping that this show just helps other people learn the right way first so you don't have to relearn. And of course, joining me as she does every week, Coach Maria. Big day for you yesterday. I was living vicariously through all your social media at the Boston Marathon.
Oh, it was so fun. It was really a fun day to be a spectator just because the weather was warmer for us. Yeah. But
and sunny.
Yeah, it was sunny. It was beautiful. Boston came out. I mean, I'm exhausted. We had a long day yesterday, but it was fun.
So what were some of the highlights? Because I watched it on TV and it just looked very fun.
Yeah, I got to see the elite women up close. I was like, I could have touched Jenny Simpson, which I was really excited about. Good thing I didn't want to get arrested.
Right.
But, and I got a good shot of Desi. I was really close to Desi. And so it was fun to watch the women. I didn't actually get to see the men because I had to be where I needed to be for my people. But it was fun to watch. Like the earlier they started, the earlier you got to start, the better off you were yesterday. So our weather forecast or your weather forecast was pretty good.
Yeah. Last week, 7 days out, we talked about the tailwind. We talked about low dew points, which also meant it was going to be sunny. So it did heat up. And if you didn't start your race until 10, 11 o'clock, during those 4 hours, it heats up.
Yeah. It heated up a lot quicker than we thought it was going to. So I think a lot of people went out too fast those first few miles because it was in the 50s. But then it was really quickly 70.
Yeah.
So, and then in Boston, I actually at the end, it was for some of the charity runners, it was 73. So it was getting pretty warm.
Did you see, I shared it from Featherstone's Instagram, but Emma Bates, right, at the finish line, someone hands her a Modelo. She chugs it. I'm like, now that's how you finish a Boston Marathon. First American woman and a chug of a Modelo.
She's like, yep, been there, done that. Now I can do it.
Yes. All right. So today's topic is, it might not be the most, thing people want to talk about all the time, but it is about the pelvic floor and the glute exercises. So
I actually find it to be a very sexy topic.
Yeah, so it just,
so you know,
it's we were just so joining us is Anne-Marie Fulham. Now she is a physical therapist, but then she also has a certification in specifically pelvic floor therapy. So first of all, why was this a specialty that you gravitated toward? And then, how do we keep it from being a taboo?
Yeah, I wish it wasn't it's very common for people to have pelvic floor issues, yet people aren't talking about it. And a lot of times it's coming from the pregnancy, and they're told, the doctors are telling them, well, you had a baby, this is why it hurts. And once the pregnancy's over, then it should go away, but it usually doesn't. We need to kind of keep on top of having those muscles fire the way they should fire. And we shouldn't be afraid of talking about this. So I'm glad you invited me to talk about this.
And so, of course, it's because we were specifically sort of the incontinence thing. But is it just for women, or do men have this?
No, yes. So we shouldn't be thinking, this is a female-male problem. It's about how the muscles fire, and it's interesting that breath work has a lot to do with that too. So if we're not even breathing right, we're not getting the pelvic floor muscles to work the way they should work. So everyone should be involved with it. They shouldn't be scared away. When I talk about pregnancy, I feel that pregnancy pushes it to the extreme. It's not about, will you have bad posture? You will have bad posture with pregnancy. So just because I have that certification with the pregnancy world, it covers everybody, because the pregnancy is just pushing it to the extreme.
And Maria, why is this important for runners for these specific muscle groups, the pelvic floor and the glute? Why is that being used in running?
Well, our glutes are our strongest muscle, and if we're not using them, we're wasting a whole bunch of energy, and we're also overworking our hamstrings. That's correct, right, Anne-Marie?
Yes. And actually, when I think of things that I did wrong as a runner, just like Lee was saying in the beginning, I overstride, and I think we all do that, and that hamstring gets affected when we're kicking that leg out. When you're on that one stance leg, you're putting a lot of pressure on that pelvic floor. So, yeah, and then
a lot of stress on those upper hamstring.
Yep.
Upper hamstring and that tendon right there is very common for injuries in runners.
I'm chronic. I have a chronic hamstring issue, and I know this is where it came from because I was overstriding. So there's a picture up here with the myofascial slings, and that's this is so interesting to me with the body because that's the way the force is traveled throughout the body. It will follow, the muscles will connect with each other and share that force vector throughout the body. So
if someone's watching or listening to this on a podcast, like what are these muscle groups doing in each of these pictures?
So like a good example would be the posterior sling, and I even have a pelvis to show you. So when we fire through the hamstring into the glutes, we should be closing the pelvis strong, and it's called a form closure that way, and then the pelvis is stable, so we can stand on one foot at a time. But if those superficial muscles like the glutes aren't firing right, then we're not getting that closure, and you're going to feel, and that's very common to get SI pain that way. So we do want to make sure that the glutes are firing when they should and not have the hamstrings take over. And that's a very common thing I see. So a lot of times people will think, oh, I have to work my glutes. So they go in and do like heavy leg press, but really they just need to work on the neuromuscular part of it, which is just squeezing the hamstring. So I mean, squeezing the glute and not have the hamstring turn on.
Okay, so I was just about to ask you, as someone who is currently sitting right now going like, oh, my upper hamstring, and I have to sit on a little ball when I'm at work, what can I do? And my first thought is squats, but I feel like that's going to hurt my hamstring even more. So
First, check yourself if you're overfiring. So if it's hard to just squeeze one glute at a time, then can we all do that now? I know it's kind of fun when you can. So I tell if you can't just squeeze me, let's just start with our right or left, then think about that. Okay. That means that other muscles are helping out for what we just talked about with having that pelvis closed tight. So before you get to do those heavy lifting, you're just reinforcing a bad habit. So you're having that hamstring take over for the glute work. So I try to shut things down first, have the patient just work on just squeezing the glutes. And I tell them they can do it in the car, to music. You just try to make this as interesting as much as you can, because you could do it standing in line, you could do it anywhere. People don't even
do it at stoplights, I'm going to be honest.
That's the best time, especially when we have a lot of those.
Yeah. Well, I actually have one of my New Year's resolutions, we're not really calling it that, was that when I stop at a stoplight, sometimes I automatically look at my social media.
Right.
So I've been trying to stop that. So now at stoplights,
squeeze your glutes.
Squeeze my glutes. And now it's 2 resolutions.
Right. And then if you notice one is weaker than the other, then you might have the beat for that one side and throw in the other side. But, you're trying to get them equal. If it is hard at first, then you can squeeze both and try to let go of one. So that might be the way to
I feel like
start.
My face is squeezing as I'm doing each side.
I know. I'm trying right now. I'm like,
I know. It could be like you're feeling like you're doing something like that. So it is a little weird at first. But then that's why it's frustrating, because your brain is trying to tell your body to do something and it has to work together. So you just have to trust the process. It usually takes about 2 weeks for that to come back strong. Then you should be doing more of glute specific exercises.
And what would those be?
So that would I like this one exercise. Once you're past what we just talked about, just squeezing, isolation, going on your forearms, and then have your legs straight out, and that way you're helping the angle of that posterior sling I was talking about. So if the leg was here and you're just lifting up.
Okay, so you're like in a plank position?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're on your forearms, so the plank isn't going to be so hard to do. Then keep your legs, one leg is straight, one leg is on the knee, so you're on your knee, and then the other leg is straight, and then you're just lifting up on an
Like
angle.
kind of like a donkey kick, kind of like?
Well, the leg
Right.
is straight, yes.
The leg is straight.
But you're
instead
right,
of
it would be a
okay.
donkey kick. And the reason
straight
why
leg.
I like it, the leg just going out like 30 degrees, because that's the same angle as that forced closure I was talking about with
Oh,
that
right,
posterior
right.
sling. I mean, should I just get up and do it?
No,
Okay,
you're good.
okay,
You're
okay.
good. I mean, we can put it on the if you.
I have videos on my website if you want to.
Okay.
go
there you go.
there.
Maybe at the end when we're
Perfect.
we'll let you get on the floor. We'll show it. But
Yeah.
so and why are the pelvic floor and the glutes? Why are they connected?
Okay, so the pelvic floor has 14 muscles that are in the inside of the girdle. So and you can tell that this is not a typical type of muscle where we would have like a lever arm where you're contracting. They have more of almost like think of it as like a trampoline, as a sling. So
Okay.
when we take a breath, the air comes down, and then if it has good tone, what it should have, it should push right back up. So this is where we get in trouble if our glutes are weak. Then the pelvic floor can't do that job where pushing back up, because if the glutes aren't holding this stable, then they can't do their job. So there is this connection where having strong glutes will help the pelvic floor. Now, I like to combine an exercise where we activate. So just doing like a lunge, but adding a twist with the lunge will activate the pelvic floor as well.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like
is
just
it
doing.
is it a twist at an angle, or do you have to go at a certain angle to do it?
Not, it's just to get some internal rotation.
Okay.
So
Yep.
just doing like clamshells is good for that first phase we were just talking about, where we're just hoping to get the hamstring, the glutes to fire without the hamstring. That's why I like the clamshell, where you're laying on your side, your knees are bent so the hamstring's not acting. But we need to progress from that, because we don't just externally rotate. If I had the hip bone here too, we internally rotate to take that step. So we need to combine that coordination. So by doing a lunge and internally rotating, now you're going to coordinate those muscles to work together.
We do that often before track
Good.
practice. Like, I think a lot of people forget that you can activate your glutes. You have to think about activating your glutes. They don't just naturally happen. So if you do that in your dynamic warm up before you're doing hard efforts, that can sometimes make that glute activate.
You're right, and that's why I like those dynamic warm-ups. So that's smart to do. Just to,
And then until your body's doing it, it's on its own.
exactly, because
better,
you
right?
can't think about it. By the time you're
no.
thinking about it, you're on the next
Yeah.
step, right? So it has to
for
come,
sure.
and that's what those exercises are for. So the body knows how to react in these weird positions, because we have to be able to stabilize that pelvic floor. Like if a sneeze came on, or if you were running and there was a little dip in the road, the pelvic floor has to react to that. And if we don't have the strength, it can't. But it's like
This is all very similar to also singing. Did you know that?
No, dude.
Yeah, this singing when you have to build your diaphragm and you have to take those deep breaths for singing.
Oh,
you need a
that's
strong
perfect.
pelvic floor. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that
Really
makes
cool.
sense to me.
Because people have been listening for a while now. Maria, that was sort of your background. Never thinking
singing,
that you could ever do something physical, but you were
No,
doing
and
something physical when you were singing.
Yeah, and actually, if you're a singer out there, they make very good runners. Actually,
I can
they
totally
have good
see that.
they have good breath support, and a lot of times they have good rhythm, so they have good cadence.
Right.
Typically,
And that's like something that I like to teach for the women coming back from postpartum. They don't have that rhythm yet with the breath. It's a hard coordination. I mean, so I can see where that singing is perfect for that. Like you said, it's like almost a natural way. and we have to teach
Do you have a
that.
certain breath work that you recommend to build that
Um,
pelvic floor?
like it used to be easier when we were in the cold weather, and I would do
Yeah.
this anyway, but I would take like 4 breaths in for each step, like, and then, so 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th is the exhale. So with each step, it would be, that kind of helped getting that rhythm back. So you're not, because it can be tough to get that rhythm with the running and the breathing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm naturally a heavy breather, like especially when I'm running hard, I am a heavy breather. Like even at 10K pace, I'm like sucking wind. Is there like, should you change that or should you, is that like, is it partly genetic? Like, how does that?
No, so I'm curious if I'm because what your background with the singing, I'm sure you're doing it correctly, but sometimes we breathe only in our chest, but we really,
Yeah.
like we were talking about, we want the belly to expand. And
Yeah.
I was called a paradoxal breather, where I would take a deep breath in and I would only have my chest and my stomach would go in. And that's the opposite. We want the opposite. We want our belly to go out. And I think what I was thinking is that, like, oh, you breathe in, the air goes in the chest first and then the belly. But no, your
it's belly
diaphragm
first.
goes down. It pulls
Yeah.
that negative air, that negative pressure pulls the air in, and then the belly goes out. So I had to relearn how to breathe. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And I'm very good at doing it at an easy pace. I can do it at an easy pace, but I really struggle like when I'm running hard to do that as much.
The maybe the breath work of thinking of a beat might help. But
Oh yeah.
another exercise to do to practice is doing a deep squat and then taking those deep breaths in, because when you're in that deep squat position, you can't just breathe in the chest. It has to go to the belly. And I love that exercise because that'll help relax the pelvic floor as well by being in that deep squat. And some people can't get in the deep squat, but that's okay. You can use a prop like sitting on a foam roller or a yoga block and try to get lower and lower. But that would be your goal, and then take your deep breaths.
To get below parallel or parallel?
Yeah, you want your knees above you, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know.
So more of a
Anne-Marie just wants to get right up on that table and start doing stuff.
So more of like a frog squat, like all the way down like that? Okay.
Yes, all the way down. And then another position, if that's hard, happy baby, where you're on your back and you hold your feet. So that's basically the same thing, but now you're laying down or vice versa. The deep squats, you're seated on the floor. But if that's tough, you can lay on your back and grab your feet and try that breath work. Because then you want to try to get that breath to go to your pelvic floor. So,
and what happens with weak pelvic floor?
So that's when you might have an accident. When you sneeze, you might have a little leakage. You might even have the opposite, where even science is still figuring out these studies, or they get confused because they look at the EMG studies and they're like, oh no, your pelvic floor is the EMG shows that it's activating. But what happens for that is you might have that urgency where you think you have to go to the bathroom a lot. And it's just because those muscles are forgetting to turn off. Oh. So like your body's thinking, oh, I don't want to have a leakage, so I'm constantly I'm constantly firing those muscles. And so in that case, we need to relax the pelvic floor. And that's the kind of thing I would do with those deep squats, those yoga poses, and breath work too.
And that's what I was going to ask. Like, when you have clients find you, what are their issues? Like, what brings them to you?
That's a good question, because I'm fairly new in the private practice because I left the hospital world, and I was expecting to see a lot of pregnancy, but I am getting a lot of women who are going through menopause. That's common. The changes in your hormones like the lower estrogen will also weaken the pelvic floor. So I am seeing a lot of issues with like just the leakage, and I get some constipation issues as well. So interesting enough that, the iliopsoas, that big muscle that comes from our spine into the hips, that will actually massage when we breathe. That will actually massage our organs and our intestines. So doing a lot of twisting exercises like a piriformis stretch or those yoga poses that twist will help with constipation. So I will help out with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you were showing the graphic earlier, how multiple muscles work together for every one movement. Basically, you don't realize one of those going wrong messes up the whole thing.
And then the body remembers, oh, I didn't pee myself doing it this way. That was a success. So now I'm always going to do that, which is a bad habit. So sometimes we need to shut things down and kind of restart over. So that's where I tell pregnant women, like, look, you're starting from a fresh slate, a clean slate. Now they might even be able to feel better because they don't have other muscles in the way of things. So it's a clean slate. But yes, muscles will try to help out when they really should just stay in their lane and do their own job.
Now, I have a question. If you are a runner and you just get pregnant, are there something that you should be doing to help those muscles for running after you have a baby, like while you're pregnant or before you get pregnant? Some exercises that you can do to kind of ease the blow, I guess.
Right. So 4 things that are going to be affected with the pregnancy. Your feet are going to change. So you could start doing like foot yoga. I don't know if you know those.
I've heard of it.
Yep. And then keep in mind, you might want to get better shoes because your feet are changing. You might need orthotics if that's part of that, because you will flatten out the feet with pregnancy. Then the core will always be an issue. So you can do things like bear hovers, I don't know if I can have exercises on my website as well. But addressing your core and then of course your glutes. So, and then the breath work as well. So But you have to think about when you're pregnant, like you can still work your core without doing things like laying on your back to do sit-ups. There's so many more exercises to help out without just laying on your back.
And so you were talking about the posture that we have can impact where that breath goes.
Right. So the one picture with the blue, that's showing a great way we're inhaling. The air is hitting the whole area in a 360 degrees. But if we have poor posture, then you could see where the air is going to push. And then when we're doing something like running, we're going to have strain on, our spine, our hips, and it could be, it could lead into something like a herniated disc or, so those issues are more like, chronic. And then you're just like, how did I get this herniated disc? Well, it could have been from your poor posture.
And so I see, you've got the person that's leaning forward, right? Like when you think about a slumping, but then you also even flaring back is an issue.
Right. So that would be more like a pregnant person where they're anterior tilted. They have to make room. They're going to have rib flaring because of making room for that baby in there. So that's where I go back to say it's knowing the pregnancy is going to help everyone, because it's not like, well, maybe you're going to have a rib flare. You will have a rib flare. You're going to have a rib flare.
For sure. Yeah. I myself actually have an anterior tilt.
Okay.
So I have to really be conscious of really trying to stay neutral, which is hard.
Yeah.
And then I have a tendency when I get tired running to slouch those shoulders forward. I always have to constantly be like, go back. I was thinking about it in my 5K this weekend. Go back.
Is that pretty common with runners? I feel like or basically with people, as you get tired,
You're right.
You slump.
And we all like to do that, right? And so, and with that one picture with that abdominal canister where we're helping our posture, we don't want to be in this position because now you're losing out. And so you always want to at least imagine this area up and down. So going back to that deep squat, that puts you in that position. I feel like, I know I started talking about the constipation, but that position is also a good position to be going to the bathroom if you had to make a bowel movement, because now the colon and
that's the squatty potty.
The squatty potty.
Yes. So if you don't have, you could always put like 2 stools in the bathroom, but yeah, the squatty potty is perfect for that reason.
And so so what you're saying is if your pelvic floor is weak, then you can get constipated?
Well,
Or is
if
it
you're not
because it's
using,
overly tight?
yeah, if you are not breathing right, so you're not having that the iliopsoas massaging the intestines to help the motility, you can get that constipation.
Oh, interesting.
So it is interesting how everything
It's
overlaps.
also interesting how it works together.
I know, I know.
So I will ask the question. We've had an episode all about GI issues. So does that, where you didn't feel like you had to go until you are running. Now, does that have anything to do with it, or is that just going to be like, it's what you ate the night before? Is not,
And that might be a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah, to have to run to the bathroom.
Yeah.
But they do. There is, yeah. I mean, it can be constipation
A lot of
can
times
show
that's
as
metabolism.
diarrhea as well. But I think what you're talking about is
Something-
maybe something
okay.
like you might have eaten.
Maybe an overactive metabolism, because that's
Right.
what happens when you get out there and start running. That metabolism is like, yay, let's go.
Yeah, and that is
Sometimes it
helping
goes
the
into
motility.
overdrive.
Right,
Yes.
right.
'Cause I was anything to stop it. That's why I was like, if I can do any sort of breath work to make this not happen again or as often. But you're just,
Yeah.
maybe that's just one we have to learn to deal with.
I know that one. You might have to run to the bathroom. Yeah.
Figure out where all the porta potties are on your route. And so how will you know if you have built that pelvic floor enough? Like at this point, I don't have incontinence issues when I run. So how do I know? Is it right? Is it?
Then it should be right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that was a good check to see if your glutes are firing, so you can kind of keep on top of that to make sure you are firing when you should. So, keeping it healthy, keeping that posture right. I know it sounds funny to think that, being upright is going to help your glutes, but like we were just saying, everything's connected. So I know it's an important, issue that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
So.
But Maria thinks it's a sexy issue.
Yeah, well, it's just sexy because I struggled with it.
Yeah,
Aw,
yeah. So
A lot of people do.
But you were
Yeah.
young. I mean, quite young.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Like we know so much more than we knew 15 years ago,
Oh, yeah.
even. But I would run on the track, and then my last rep on the track, when I was running as hard as I can, I would literally wet myself. Like it was kind of embarrassing, and sometimes my coach would like spray me with the hose so the other guys wouldn't know that I just wet myself.
That's
'Cause she
very
knew that-
sweet.
And actually, there was one race I did it in. It was like coming down into the finishing chute. I had no control. It
Yeah.
was after I had pregnancy. I was running as hard as I could, and all of a sudden I was just peeing.
Oh,
It's like,
no.
oh my gosh. And it was so funny because like my coach was like, well, that's one way to get rid of the competition. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, but it was kind of embarrassing for me. And I don't know, like I just overall, I've always been strength training, and I always know that glutes are important for my running form. So I've always worked my glutes, and I haven't had that problem in a long time. Maybe it was just from developing my glutes, but what would you have done or said to somebody like me who came to you and was like, I just wet myself the last mile of my race?
I would say, first of all, you're not alone. We've all
Okay, good.
probably all had an incident like that. But I would assess you and make sure the way you're moving, like how you do, like how you bend, how you rotate, making sure the pelvis is aligned right. And usually that is what we would just, it's usually about the firing of the muscles, the timing of that. And so I would assess what is actually the cause of this. But it sounds like you figured it out anyway, your glutes. So
Well, I think by accident. But-
right. And so
and
like-
also going to PT, I've always had my hips since pregnancy have always been way too flexible.
okay.
Just
Yeah.
like they never kind of really like got back stable.
Mhm.
So I think part of that was, just strengthening the muscles around that to keep it. I mean, I still struggle with it. It's
Yeah.
not as bad, but
Yeah. Keep
I
it
always
strong.
have to go to PT.
Yeah. And then also while you're coming back from those issues, shortening that gait, right? Remember, do you know the
yeah.
the rocker bottom drill is a good drill. So
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
So it's like a heel toe. So you imagine your feet are like rockers.
Okay.
So your heel toe, and you don't want to overstride. So you want to imagine maybe there's an imaginary stick coming out of your toe, and then you're stepping over that. So
Interesting.
It's just like that. It's a good
I
warm
love
up.
visual cues like that. Yeah.
And so, and then you're not saying run your entire run like that.
No.
This is sort of those dynamic warm-ups ahead of time.
Yes.
Okay.
But then I do go back to that. Like if you're out in your run and you're thinking, should I keep going? I feel my pelvic floor is a little bulging. You know, that I don't know if that's how you felt, Maria, but like if it's like a
I really
heavy
got no
feeling.
warning. I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
No warning.
It was just like, bam, there it
There
is.
it is. Okay.
It's out there.
So it sounds like a pure endurance thing.
Yeah.
But like if
Yeah.
you're just trying to decide, should I keep going? Then go back and do those little, go into that stride. Because I even
okay.
do that now when I feel my hamstring. I'm like, should I walk? So then I do that. And then a lot of times I could finish my run and go back into my normal pace again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Maria, why don't you talk about some of the dynamic warm-ups that you do that kind of for your runners that will help with this? And you were just talking about some of them before.
Well, so we do donkey kicks sometimes, we do the lunge with the twist. We do that every week.
Good.
Mostly A skips, B skips, stuff that are gonna and a lot of times we just squeeze our glutes. Like I say, squeeze your glutes, let them go, squeeze your glutes, just because we don't use them. Or 15 years ago when I was teaching boot camp class, I used to say specifically when you're doing lunges, think about your glutes, because even if you come up out of a lunge, if you're not thinking about firing that glute, you're not going to do it. It's just not a natural
You're right.
thing that we do.
Because
we
would
sit
be
so much.
Yeah, quads
we
and
just sit and
hamstrings.
our
We
glutes,
just really focus on those.
Yeah, and like Maria was saying, we sit a lot. And remember, I was talking about that iliopsoas muscle. It's a big hip flexor, and when we sit a lot, it will actually turn off the glutes. So we can almost get like trigger points and spasms here because we sit so much, and then it will shut off the glutes. So I even do a stretch where you're lunging just because you feel like you want to stretch that hip flexor. So arm up, stretch back. But then I'll add glute squeeze too. So it made me think of that when you said you tell your clients, Maria, to squeeze your glute.
Anytime I'm strength training, I squeeze my glute. And honestly, when you squeeze your glute, you activate your core too. So it's like, and when you're squeezing your glute and you activate your core, whatever you're doing it almost becomes like, why are we doing sit-ups? Because if you're doing that properly with everything that you do in your strength training, you shouldn't need to do sit-ups.
Right.
Right? Like
there's so many other ways to get the core.
Yeah. You're squeezing your glute, you're squeezing your core, you're doing a shoulder press.
Yeah.
You're squeezing your glute, you're squeezing your core, you're doing a bicep curl. Like every single time you're doing it, you're squeezing your glute, you're squeezing your core. Like that's like the epicenter.
So how do you, so you have to retrain your body and brain.
You have to train your body.
Because if you don't have a trainer going glutes, glutes, you need to be doing that mentally.
And I like doing right before a run or a race where you just do those leg swings, and then I add glute squeeze.
Yeah.
And then I kind of imagine that glute squeeze is the motor of that motion I'm making. So it's not just the swing. I like to combine that glute squeeze for the same reason you were saying, Maria, just to kind of, get
and
to
then
work.
once you get the hang of it, it kind of happens naturally. Like your body just naturally does it, but you have to do it a certain amount of times for your body to do that. And it's a lot of times.
You're right. You're right. We're re-educating the muscles. We're taking away a bad habit, replacing it with a good habit. So.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about at the top of the show. This is all, by the way, new to me. So when I was talking about it before, I was like just retraining how I thought. But now I'm like, I haven't been doing any of this. No, how am I even out there running anymore?
And look at me. I was like, I'm breathing wrong. How was I breathing wrong? So
and Anne-Marie's an excellent PT. Like she is. How many years have you been doing this? Tell us a little bit about your background.
30 years. I went to Hunter College in New York City, graduated in 93. Always loved running and pediatrics, so I did.
And she was a very, very, very fast runner.
Oh,
very fast.
Thank you. Not a long time ago now.
I bet you're still out there.
I tried. Yeah. Yeah, we were training, right, Maria?
Yeah, I ran with Anne-Marie a lot on the track. We had fun for a little while. She was a good training partner.
I found out, though, that the track we were at, it was like a cement track, and I had 2 stress fractures.
Ooh.
I went ahead, and Brian was the one who said, go check your vitamin D levels, because I never had stress fractures before.
We talk about that a lot on this show. Yeah, vitamin D levels.
the reason why I was having those. So
And that is something that you can add to your
yes,
you can add to your as a supplement, and
that's what I do.
Yep.
I take my vitamin
And
D.
Anne Marie, how do people get a hold of you if they need PT now? Or I know you're working in Brian's.
Yes,
Are you in
we
building?
share
Yeah.
the office at
that's awesome.
elitebodytherapy.net. And you could find me on Instagram as well, Anne Marie Fulham. But yeah.
And you have a lot of stuff on your Instagram page. I've seen a lot of videos that
I
you've been
just
doing.
started, so good. I'm glad it's catching. I'm trying to and by the way, Brian and I and a couple other podiatrists are doing a study. If you're a runner and have shin splints, we're doing a study with checking out orthotics, shockwave, and physical therapy. So I'm making up a nice protocol to come back to from an injury. So if anyone has a stress fracture, or not a stress fracture, shin splints, they can come and get be part of the study, and then they can get that service as well, having the shock.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, that's
A
great.
lot of new runners. have
Yeah.
shin
So I'm
splints.
trying to,
Very
and then
common.
I'll be posting the way to come back safely from injuries. So on that website, you can check that out as well for the exercise.
We always tell people to be very careful who you follow on social media, because those influencers might not always be giving you the right information. So this
right.
is a great,
Yeah.
physical therapist who's going to give you the right information. So if you want to follow a content creator, an influencer, at Anne Marie Fulham. So
Yes.
because we want people to get the right information.
Yes, and I'm trying to learn all of the, the lingo, but at least the physical therapy part of it is perfect, but the acting part, or the, you know what I mean, right? I'm learning that part of it.
So hopefully we're lessening the taboo, because this is a
Yes.
thing that happens. It is a part of our body. It is and you need to strengthen it. And there are ways to do that. And
It doesn't have to be scary.
Right.
It's just another, we don't want to forget about those 14 muscles inside that pelvic girdle. So that's all.
Is it different, like if you're coming back from a C-section versus a natural birth? Is it tougher
That is a
on-
great question. So after a C-section, your pelvic floor actually returns quick. So the pelvic
really?
floor actually was fine, actually. But now you're dealing with that scar. You had abdominal surgery if you had C-section. So no matter what, you're going to be dealing with something. But your pelvic floor.
That's more like a weaker core.
Yeah.
Because don't they cut through the core muscles? Yeah.
Yeah, so you're getting all that fascia. And just like we were talking, right, with those anatomy slings that, like, where the energy is going through the fascia, now it's going to be delayed here because you had that scar. So I could help you with massaging that, maybe even getting like a silicone cup to work that scar is a great way to help that. But you should try to massage the scar. Of course, I'm talking once it's healed. Like yeah. But even just like if you just had that C-section, just standing up tall is a start.
I would think that would hurt almost a little bit. Like you would be tender to want to not do that.
Yeah, and a lot of people get almost afraid of their own scar. So like we have to work on that, like just to get over that fear. But that is a normal thing, which I feel bad that people feel that way. But yeah, just standing up tall is the first part of stretching that scar. And you could do that right the day you had the baby, even just working on that.
Scary.
I know.
I mean, it's kind of cool to talk about all this stuff because it wasn't that long ago where they were telling women they couldn't run marathons because their uterus would fall out,
I
right?
know.
So like now, I mean, it wasn't that long ago.
No,
I mean,
for me,
what-
I felt like I had to keep it a secret that I went out for a run being pregnant.
Yeah.
So I know it's so different.
That's crazy. And now we're on a show talking about
Yay.
pelvic floor issues and how to stay safe. And it's just amazing what science has done.
They only just came out with a protocol to return to running last year. So that's great,
Yeah.
but then kind of ridiculous, right?
Was
Yeah,
it
it's kinda
2023? They
Right,
were, yes.
right.
Guess what? Women have been having babies for a very long time.
Thank you. I know. And then they put the babies on their back and they get in the field and work, but we can't run. So anyway, yeah.
I mean, Carla and I kind of secretly, well, not so secretly anymore. We want to have shirts made that say "Still waiting for our uterus to come out."
The Boston Marathon is a perfect example, like that they wouldn't, that they didn't allow women to do it for so
That's
long, and,
right.
so, and it was barely a generation ago. So
Right.
we're so
Yeah,
glad
no.
that this information is coming out. I mean, even I'm sure, Maria, since you started running, like the
Yeah.
information has come out and the research has been done. I mean, you guys are still doing studies on it, and will continue to evolve.
Yes.
All the studies, keep the studies coming.
Right.
I mean, we have neglected women's studies for a really long time. So
Amen.
I'm
sister.
glad to see a lot of people. Menopause is being talked about more, pelvic floor is being talked about more, and it's good to see finally.
All right, everybody ready? Left glute,
That's right.
right
yeah.
glute, left glute. Right. All right.
Caught me
All
off
right.
guard. Okay.
At stoplights, I want to see everyone left glute, right glute.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much,
Oh, it was
Emery.
so
Man,
fun.
this was, again, a light bulb moment for me after even, 15 years of running. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you,
having
Anne
me.
Marie. It was
My
good to chat
pleasure.
with you.
It's good seeing you.
Bye,
Maria.
y'all.
Bye.
Let's go.